I want to ask you all a question. What do you think the biggest problem affecting us today is? Is it war, climate change, maybe poverty? In my opinion, I think the biggest problem affecting us today is the food we eat. Not just how we grow it, not just how we dispose of it, but also how we view food as humans. Food is that one thing that regardless of what race, gender, religion, or ethnicity you're from, you have to interact with. Because let's be honest, everybody's got to eat. So I think it's kind of preposterous that we try to solve these contemporary issues and we don't look at how food impacts those issues. Take, for example, the three problems that I just gave you a couple seconds ago: climate change, war, and poverty. Food plays a big role in all three. In America, our farmers are incentivized to grow only a few certain crops, severely limiting their overall profit margin. That's severely limiting the growth of our economy. Additionally, our cities do not produce so much waste, and a large part of that waste is just food. All that methane that's coming from that food waste is going into our atmosphere, contributing to climate change. And then finally, in the future, countries are not going to be fighting wars over oil or gas or power. They're going to be fighting wars over water because everyone needs that. So as you can see, food plays a really big role in our civilization. And I think it's about time that we take it seriously. So, what is food? Well, biologically speaking, food is a series of chemical reactions that results in biomolecules. What does that mean? Well, basically, there's nutrients in food, right? And when we eat the food, we're eating the nutrients. But that's wrong. We're actually not eating the nutrients. And actually, we're not even human. We're only about 1% human. We're actually 99% bacteria. That bacteria is the one that's using that nutrients. They're using the nutrients to do their daily functions. And in turn, that's what allows us to do our daily functions. So, bacteria are everywhere. They're not just limited to our bodies. They're in soil, they're in the air. And for this example, the soil is important because those soil microbes, that's what the bacteria is called, have a very important role. What they do is they take organic matter and they turn it into nutrients, which the plants suck up through their roots, the animals take in by eating the plants, and we take in by eating both plants and animals. But there's a problem. These bacteria, these soil microbes, they're at war. They're at war with pesticides. Pesticides are bad. I'm sure you know that. But do you know how bad they are? In America, for every American alive, 3 pounds of pesticides are sprayed on our crops. The most commonly used pesticide, which is glyphosate, by the way, causes not only cancer, but also severe birth defects in women. Pesticides create an environment where soil microbes can't live. And if we don't do anything about it, those pesticides are going to get not only into our water, but also into our food, and eventually into our bodies. But you know what's worse than pesticides? Over-tilling. Tilling is when farmers use machinery to dig up the land so that they can put the plants, the seeds, into the ground. And that's all fine. That's part of their job. But the problem is when they over-till. When you over-till the ground, what you're doing is you're getting rid of all the plants. You're getting rid of all the dirt that's there. You're allowing the water moisture and the carbon that's in the ground to go up into the air, and that contributes to climate change. That means there's going to be less rain in that area, there's going to be hotter temperatures, and it's not going to be a good situation. Now, this can result in erosion. A good example of that is the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl was a period of time in American history when large tracts of land in the Midwest weren't taken care of properly. And because of this, the dirt turned into dust, the dust got picked up by the wind, and then it ruined people's houses, it ruins people's animals, it ruined people's livelihoods. And if you have erosion at this sort of a scale for too long, what can happen is something called desertification. Desertification is when land turns into desert. And this can lead to mass emigration when people leave the area. This can lead to severe weather. And it's bad for the environment. So, we've established that overtilling leads to desertification, and pesticides kill the soil microbes, which are essential to our health. So then, what is the solution? Well, the solution is biosequestration. Now, what does that mean? Biosequestration is basically when humans work with nature rather than fighting against it to not only meet our food needs, but also to, if not solve, at least alleviate some of the problems that we've already created. So there's a multitude of ways that you can do this. But the 3 ways that I'm going to be talking about are regenerative farming, bringing livestock back to line crops, and composting in the cities. So what is regenerative farming? Well, as you can see by this picture, regenerative farming is when you have multiple crops in one area. And just look at that picture. You can tell how much greener the regenerative farm looks compared to the traditional farm. Regenerative farms use multicultures, or multiple crops, to plant that are planted in the ground, as opposed to one crop, or monocultures. And this allows the ground to be covered the whole year, which keeps the temperatures colder, which keeps the ground fixed, leading to less erosion, and it sequesters or brings that carbon and that water back from the atmosphere back into the ground. And that is going to help alleviate climate change. And the reason we need to use regenerative farming is because there's 2 parts to it. Part 1, I just talked about. But part 2 is bringing the livestock to the line crops. Livestock get a really bad rap for how they add carbon to the atmosphere. But they're actually really cool animals. What they do is their fecal matter can add soil microbes to the dirt. Their hooves and their feet dig up the land perfectly so that seeds can naturally be replanted. And also, they trim the grass, they trim the plants, allowing the shorter plants to grow. And that's what the animals do for the plants. The plants give the animals nutrient-rich food. And if the animals have nutrient-rich food, their meat is going to taste better. So if we had regenerative farming, imagine if we had regenerative farming. We would not only have better tasting food, the farmers would get more money since they're selling more crops, but also the environment would be alleviated, if not fixed. So that's only 2 parts, and that only takes care of one section of this whole picture, which is the farms. But I don't want to neglect another section of this whole picture, which is composting. 80% of the world population lives in cities, and cities produce a lot of waste. A good portion of that waste is just food. If we could recycle that food waste, we would be helping the environment so much. And a good way to do this is by composting. Composting is turning food into dirt. And a lot of cities have initiated this program called the Green Bin program, but I'm going to use LA as an example since LA has been the best at doing it so far. What they do is they take green bins, they put them in front of everybody's houses, and they say, hey, can you put your food waste in this green bin? And the people are like, okay. So they take the food, they put it in the green bin, and then Department of Sanitation comes over, and they pick up the trash can, and they bring it to a composting facility. And by doing this, you're taking that food, and you're turning it into this black gold, this black dirt, known as compost. And that stuff is really good at holding in the nutrients, at holding in the water and the carbon that's in the air right now. And it's so good at it that in LA, they actually send it back to the farms in Kansas and Montana so that those farmers can use that compost rather than using the artificial fertilizers and the pesticides that they're currently using. And by doing all this, they're helping the environment. So imagine a world if we not only had regenerative farming, but we had livestock on those regenerative farms, and we had composts to complement those regenerative farms. We would not only be giving the farmers more money, boosting the economy, we'd also be alleviating the environment by bringing that carbon, that water back into the earth. We'd also be giving the animals more free range, answering that moral question of, is factory farming bad? And also, we'd be our food would taste better, which is always a plus. So in general, I think that if we do all these things, we can lead ourselves to a period known as drawdown. Right now, what's happening is that global temperatures, as you may know, are going up at a very alarming rate. But if we reach this period known as drawdown, what will happen is that the rate the temperatures are going up are going to flatline. They're going to plateau. And eventually, 20 years after that, they'll start to go back down. They'll cool. We'll enter a cooling period where the temperatures will go back to what they were 50 to 100 years ago. And by doing all these things, we will be creating an environment, a future that's more sustainable and that's livable for our future generations. And we need to be able to do that because according to the United Nations, in 60 years, we're not going to have any more soil left. We're not going to have any topsoil left. Topsoil is essential to farming. And if we don't have any more topsoil left, if we don't have any more farms left, we're not going to have any more food. And our population is expected to hit 12 billion people in a couple years. So, in a couple decades, sorry. So if we don't solve this food issue, we're going to be in big trouble. But I strongly do believe that we can fix this problem because we're the dominant species on this earth. And that's not just by luck. That's because of our big brains. We're smart, and we are smart. We're really smart, and we can accomplish a lot of things. And I truly do believe that if we use our big brains to accomplish to solve these problems, then we'll create a better, sustainable future. And before I go, I just want to remind you that it might be the mighty brain that has allowed us to accomplish all these feats that humanity is known for. But without the food that the humble belly has eaten, none of it would have been possible.